The world in 2026 will be faster, louder, and more chaotic than today. If you don't have a system to process stress, you will break. Most people react to everything: a rude comment, a bad email, a traffic jam. They are slaves to their emotions. But the top 1% operate differently. They use an ancient mental operating system called Stoicism. Today, I'm giving you the 7 specific habits to build an invincible mind for the coming year. Habit 1. The control switch. Distinguishing between what you can change, your actions, and what you cannot, the economy, others' opinions. The core distinction is practical and clear. You can influence your actions, not the external conditions that shape a workday. Your thoughts, choices, and responses stay under your control. The economy, others' opinions, and sudden events do not. Picture a mental shield that lets pressure hit you but doesn't break your center. A pause button you can press between impulse and action helps you choose deliberately. The inner citadel is the mental space where you review options calmly and pick the most useful move. This trio keeps you emotionally present without letting storms dictate your moves. To practice daily, begin with a simple morning routine that maps controllables to actions. Create 2 quick lists: what you can control, your plan, your effort, your tone; what you cannot, market winds, colleagues' judgments, random disruptions. Set 1 concrete action you will take today that remains under your control, such as choosing a constructive tone in conversations or outlining a plan before meetings. Use the pause button before replying to emails or weighing a tough question. 3 slow breaths or a count to 5 helps. End the morning by jotting a brief note: what you controlled, what was outside your reach, and 1 concrete action you will take to align with your choice. If a disruption arises, you predefine a safe move that preserves your integrity while adjusting your approach. During the day, apply the control switch in real time. When a colleague pushes back on your idea, pause and name the emotion you notice, then ask what action sits within your power. Gather the evidence for and against the proposal, distinguish signal from noise, and respond with clarity. The action you take might be asking a clarifying question, offering a revised plan, or agreeing to revisit after gathering more data. Visualize the inner citadel as a personal fortress where impulses are noticed but not invited to drive the outcome. The mental shield protects your focus, turning emotional energy into steady momentum rather than reactive force. You'll still feel things, but the feelings no longer dictate your next move. End the day with a brief reflection that cements the habit. Ask what you could control today that you did, and what remained outside your scope. Note any moments when the pause button kept you grounded, and what the outcome was after you acted from your controllables. Track a simple metric: how many times you paused before reacting, and the impact of the controllable action you chose. Over time, emotions remain part of your experience, yet they no longer own the agenda. You develop a practical resilience, the kind that keeps professionals steady, effective, and capable of thriving in 2026 without being enslaved by the ebb and flow of things you cannot change. Habit 2. The morning forecast. Visualizing potential problems before you start your day so they don't surprise you. The morning forecast is a 5 to 10 minute practice that primes your day by naming the bumps you might encounter and deciding how you will respond before the first email arrives. It's a practical tool, not a crystal ball, and it works because it creates a clear boundary between what you can influence and what you can't. Think of it as building a mental shield that trims the surprise factor and a pause button that keeps you from rushing into a knee-jerk reaction. The inner citadel you cultivate in this ritual gives you a steady center to return to when the day tests you. Begin with a calm, brief breath to settle the senses, then review the day's calendar and commitments. Identify 3 likely friction points. These are moments that could derail your focus, such as a tight deadline, a difficult meeting, or a technological hiccup. For each point, decide whether you can influence the outcome directly or only influence your approach. If you can influence it, map out a concrete response. If you can't, map out how you will interpret it and keep moving. This is where you practice the core idea: not everything is within your control, but your plan for how you respond is. The core method is the if-then plan. For every anticipated problem, write an if-then line. If 10th happens, then first why. For example, if a client pushes back on a proposal, then first acknowledge the concern, present 2 clear options, and ask for a brief follow-up time to think through the best fit. If a meeting runs long, then first propose a time-boxed next step and summarize decisions in writing. If the system glitches, then first switch to an alternate channel and communicate transparently about the workaround. Pair each line with a mental rehearsal. See yourself staying calm, saying the right words, and continuing with purpose. This rehearsal is the pause button in action. Record the forecast in a simple notebook or digital note, a short reminder of what you're protecting your energy against. When you encounter the day's actual bumps, you'll notice a smoother transition from perception to response, because you've already practiced the structure of response. After-action checks help you refine what worked, what didn't, which cues predicted friction accurately. Over time, you'll discover recurring patterns, like predictable meeting pushbacks or consistent tech delays, and your forecasts become sharper, your reactions more deliberate, and your decisions more aligned with your values. The aim isn't to suppress emotion, but to keep it from steering decisions you're trying to navigate with clarity and purpose. Habit 3. The pause protocol. Never reacting instantly. Taking 5 seconds of silence before answering an angry message. Taking a 5-second pause before replying to an angry message changes the dynamics of the exchange. It acts as a practical cooling mechanism that reduces impulsive replies and clears space for a clearer, more accurate response. Applied consistently, the pause protocol becomes a daily habit that strengthens your mental shield, your pause button, and your inner citadel. You still feel the heat of the moment, but you don't let it drive the outcome. To practice this habit every day, start with a small setup that supports discipline. When a message lands, notice the body signal. The stomach tightens, the jaw tenses, the pulse quickens. Name the feeling briefly: anger, frustration, criticism. Then engage the pause button. Count to 5 slowly, or simply dwell in a short, quiet moment. After that moment, draft a response that reflects what you want to communicate, not what your reflex wants to say. If you're typing and the timer is up, pause again before you press send. Over days and weeks, this becomes automatic, and your inner dialogue shifts from reactive to purposeful. The inner citadel grows stronger as you train your attention to stay with the task of thinking clearly before acting. In real life, the effect shows up in surprising ways. A coworker blasts out a message about a missed deadline. In the old pattern, a sharp retort would fly back, escalating tension. With the pause protocol, you wait 5 seconds, acknowledge the other person's frustration, and then respond. First, hear that the deadline was missed. Let me review the current status and propose a plan by end of day. The result is a cooler channel, less personal attack, and a cooperative path forward. With clients or customers, the pause can turn a potential conflict into a collaborative adjustment. You say, first hear your concern about timing. Here are 2 options, and first I'll follow up with a concrete schedule. The tone shifts, trust can be preserved or even strengthened. The pause protocol isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about not letting emotion drive the reply. Think of it as a daily guardrail you set for yourself. If a message contains harassment or threats, the same 5-second pause helps you respond with boundaries and clarity, short, firm, and professional, without surrendering your control. You can still postpone a non-urgent decision if more information is needed, or propose a precise time to revisit the issue. Tools help too. Enable delayed sends on email, or use a note to yourself that you'll respond after a defined pause. Each small action reinforces the mental shield you carry into conversations, and every measured reply strengthens the inner citadel you're building. Habit 4. Voluntary discomfort. Taking a cold shower or skipping a meal to remind your body that you are tougher than you think. Voluntary discomfort is a deliberate practice that trains the body and mind to endure controlled stress. The idea isn't about suffering for its own sake. It's about building a mental shield that makes everyday emotions less volatile. Discomfort becomes a signal you control. 2 practical forms are a cold shower and a planned meal skip. Each acts as a small, repeatable test you can run in your day. You set the tempo. To begin, anchor the habit to a regular cue. When you step into the shower, finish with a burst of cool water for a short stretch. If that feels like too much at first, ease in with a few seconds of cool water and extend it gradually over days. After workouts, incorporate a brief cold rinse to reinforce the pattern. For meals, choose 1 day a week to skip a meal or to shift to a lighter option, ensuring you stay hydrated and attentive to your body's signals. If health concerns exist, check with a clinician before starting. Make this a micro-challenge, not a risk. Physically, the body learns to regulate temperature and stress responses, while emotionally you practice the pause. When emotions surge, you picture your inner citadel and give yourself a moment to pause before reacting. The pause button becomes a habit you can press anytime you face pressure or criticism. Over time, small discomforts become manageable, and larger ones feel less overwhelming. This is how a Stoic habit strengthens emotional intelligence without erasing feeling. In a tense meeting, you might notice the urge to snap, breathe, observe, and choose a constructive path instead. Keep a simple log and observe your shifts. Note how you felt before and after the discomfort, and what changed in your decision-making. Track clarity, steadiness under deadlines, and sleep quality as you continue. Discomfort should be purposeful and safe, not extreme or reckless. If you feel dizzy or faint, stop and recover. The goal isn't to prove toughness by pain, but to prove you are the one steering the ship. Voluntary discomfort becomes a tool you reach for when emotions threaten to pull you off balance, not a thing you run from. The result is a steadier mind, a stronger will, and a calmer voice in the storm. Habit 5. The view from above. Zooming out to see your problems as tiny dots on a map to reduce anxiety. The view from above invites you to lift your attention above the immediate storm and see your challenges as tiny dots on a map. From that height, a rushed email or a tense meeting loses its bite. You gain proportion, realizing you are steering a larger system, not being driven by a single crack in the windshield. A mental shield forms softly, not as a wall, but as a steadying line for your impulse to react. The inner citadel and the pause button work together to let you observe before you respond. To practice daily, start with a 5-minute morning map where you list your top 3 priorities and position them on a mental landscape. Label one path as your focus for the day. Throughout the day, whenever tension spikes, perform a 6-second view from above. Close your eyes, breathe, and imagine yourself hovering over your life, seeing the issue as a dot on a global map. Notice how the dots shift scale when you widen the frame. Keep a simple log called the View from Above Journal. In a line or two, note what the dot was, whether you overreacted, and one next step that maps to the bigger picture. In a meeting where critique lands hard, the view from above reframes the moment as feedback about a task, not a verdict on you. That stance helps you respond with clarity. You can say, "First hear you," and "First will adjust the plan," rather than "First I'm failing." The pause button can buy you time to craft a measured reply. Meanwhile, the inner citadel reminds you that your worth isn't tied to a single outcome. Create a recurring ritual to refresh your map, a weekly 10-minute review where you redraw the landscape to reflect changing priorities. Then set a simple rule: breathe, observe, decide. When new information arrives, drop it into the map and ask what dot it shifts and whether it calls for a small adjustment or a bigger move. The goal is not to erase feelings but to keep them from hijacking the plan. And as you weave this habit into daily life, it becomes a tool for steadiness, not suppression. Habit 6. The evening audit. Asking yourself 3 questions before bed. What did first do right? What did first do wrong? How can first be better? The evening audit is a nightly reflection practice that centers on 3 questions. What did first do right? What did first do wrong? How can first be better? It acts like a mental shield, a pause button that helps emotion stay in its lane rather than hijack the narrative. You approach it with the intent to understand, not to punish yourself, so emotions stay acknowledged and not amplified. Think of it as an inner citadel where you review the day, recalibrate how you showed up, and commit to a small, concrete adjustment tomorrow. Consistency is the engine that makes this work. Begin with a simple, quiet ritual. Create a calm space, away from screens and bustle, and have a notebook or a notes app ready. Read the 3 questions aloud and answer in short, specific bullets. For what you did right, name precise actions. You listened first, you slowed your reply, you offered a clear summary, you kept your tone even under pressure. For what you did wrong, point to concrete moments. You interrupted, you assumed intent, you let a stubborn thought drive your conclusion, you neglected preparation. For how you can be better, propose one narrowly defined adjustment that you can test the next day, framed in a positive action. First, we'll ask a clarifying question before rushing a conclusion. First, we'll pause for 2 breaths before replying in a heated moment. First, we'll write down 2 questions to surface-level assumptions. The practice thrives on honesty and practical language. Emotions get labeled without drama: frustration, eagerness, stiffness, impatience, so you can see patterns rather than vague feelings. Use the pause button when a thread of stress appears. Take a quiet breath, name the emotion, and reframe your next move toward a deliberate choice rather than a reflexive reaction. The inner citadel helps you align a response with values rather than impulses. If you felt you failed to listen, the action plan might be: first, we'll repeat back what first heard before offering my view. If you noticed a tendency to speak first, the plan could be: First, we'll ask one clarifying question before contributing. Small experiments compound into predictable progress. This habit intertwines with daily life by turning nighttime reflection into daytime poise. It reduces mindless rumination and raises awareness of triggers, so you notice them earlier and respond more deliberately. Over time, you'll notice fewer knee-jerk reactions and more precise, empathetic communication. You'll move through conflicts with curiosity instead of defensiveness, and your decisions will feel steadier because they're guided by a clear thread of intention. The evening audit isn't about erasing emotion. It's about untying emotion from automatic control. It's about using a practical tool to stay emotionally intelligent in a world that moves fast and asks a lot from you. Habit 7. Love your fate. Accepting chaos not as a tragedy, but as fuel for your growth. Chaos is a constant in modern professional life. Projects shift, feedback lands unevenly, and priorities rearrange overnight. Instead of shrinking from uncertainty, a growing professional learns to tilt toward it. This is love your fate in practice, not denying disturbance, but letting disruption sharpen your edge. Your emotions won't disappear, but you won't be governed by them. The inner citadel is built from small daily choices. Every time the world tilts, you choose a stance, study, respond, learn. This mindset trains you to treat chaos as validation that you're alive and capable. When events spiral, the aim is not control but a correct response. This creates a mental shield around what matters and a flexible framework for action. First, activate the pause button. When chaos erupts, stop the impulse to react in the moment. In that pause, observe your breath and name what you can influence versus what you cannot. This is a clean boundary between feeling and choice. Then bring in the mental shield. Acknowledge the emotion that rises, tag it softly, and place it behind a protective wall so it doesn't distort judgment. In the heat of a debate, you can say to yourself, first notice first am getting rushed, and proceed with calm curiosity. Finally, hold the idea of your inner citadel. Ground yourself in a simple image of a steady chamber where your decisions are made. Little rituals help. Jot a quick note after a tense exchange about what you'll do next and why it matters. These micro-actions convert emotion into information you can act on. Chaos as data becomes your next practice. Instead of flinging blame or flailing for control, ask, what can this teach me about my plan, my team, and my own limits? Reframing distills lessons from disruption. You test assumptions, adjust timelines, and decide on concrete steps rather than broad promises. This isn't about denying frustration, it's about not letting it derange outcomes. If a sudden vendor delay hits a project, you reframe the delay as a vulnerability to uncover, then you diversify suppliers or adjust milestones without surrendering momentum. The pause button stays handy, the mental shield remains active, the inner citadel keeps you centered as you communicate clear, practical updates to stakeholders. In time, chaotic moments become predictable training grounds for better judgment and sharper strategy. The daily routine solidifies into a resilient habit. Start with a morning check-in that asks what could disrupt your plans today and how you'll respond rather than what you'll achieve. Throughout the day, practice brief, explicit recalibrations. Pause, assess, decide, act, reflect. End-of-day reflection becomes your most reliable growth engine. Note which moments felt chaotic, which responses felt free, and where your mental shields held or needed reinforcement. You'll notice that this approach reduces reactivity and increases creative problem-solving. Relationships improve as you communicate with steadiness, curiosity, and empathy. People follow steadiness more than bravado, and you'll inspire others to bring their own calm into the storm. Love your fate shows that Stoicism is not about having no emotions, but about not being enslaved by them. The result is a professional life that is emotionally intelligent, resilient, and ready to grow from whatever chaos 2026 throws your way. You cannot control the world in 2026, but you can control your mind. In 2026, professional life is shaped by rapid change, steady information flow, and widespread collaboration across time zones. You cannot control the world, but you can control your mind. The pause button becomes a practical tool for when impulses heat up. Practice. When a message or request lands and spikes your urgency, stop for 60 seconds, breathe in a controlled pattern, and name the impulse before choosing your response. Example: a critical email arrives just before a meeting. You resist the urge to snap, you collect yourself, and reply with a clear plan instead of a flare-up. The mental shield is essential in a climate of constant updates and competing priorities. Daily practice includes setting clear digital boundaries and building 2-3 focus blocks with notifications silenced. If feedback stings, treat it as information to sift, not a verdict about you. During a tough review, you listen, take notes, and respond with concrete actions rather than defensiveness. This keeps your mind anchored and your energy available for what you can influence. The inner citadel grows from steady self-trust and deliberate reflection. Personal resilience strengthens when you treat your beliefs as a fortress you reinforce daily. Practice a brief evening ritual. 3 prompts, 3 minutes. What did first control today? What did first learn? How did first act in line with my values? Add a short morning check-in to set a clear intention for protecting attention and time. Small, consistent checks build a durable center that stays steady when external winds rise. The dichotomy of control remains a practical compass for decision-making. Start by listing the top 3 controllables you can influence today and commit to one core action. Controllable factors include your effort, your plan, and your response. Uncontrollable ones include others' choices and external events. Use that list to guide your morning routine and your end-of-day review. When you focus on the controllables, progress feels more tangible and less at the mercy of randomness. Naming and regulating emotions keeps you from becoming a hostage to them. Observe what you feel, label the emotion, and then decide on a constructive next step. A simple sequence helps. Name, assess impact, choose a response. If frustration grows during a project delay, label it, reframe the delay as a signal to reassess priorities, and reply with a practical plan. Short, decisive actions dissolve lingering tension and preserve momentum. Clear values give direction amid noise. Identify 3 core values that matter most in your work and life, then use a quick check. Does this action move me toward those values? A practical tool is a 2x2 decision check, benefits versus costs, aligned versus misaligned with values. For example, choosing to have a candid, constructive conversation rather than participating in gossip aligns you with integrity and trust. Weekly values calibration helps keep choices aligned when pressure tightens. Momentum often comes from action rather than mood. Start with micro actions that require little energy but deliver visible progress. The 2-minute rule works well. Begin a task by doing the smallest possible step, then let momentum carry you forward. If you dread drafting a report, open the document, write the title, then the first sentence. Small wins accumulate into steady achievement and reinforce the mindset that you control your mind more than the world. In 2026, the power to shape outcomes begins with the decision to master your inner state. Here's the ending you can use to land the message with calm authority and warmth. The 7 habits we explored, the pause button, the mental shield, the inner citadel, clarity before action, the empathic listener, the boundary builder, and daily renewal, are not about suppressing feeling. They're about not letting feelings run the show. It's about choosing your response, moment by moment, so you stay effective without losing your humanity. The pause button is your first line of control. Practice this daily by starting the day with a 2-minute intention check and by taking a deliberate breath cycle before replying in any chat or meeting. When you feel heat rising, pause for a few deep breaths and reset your tone before you react. The mental shield is about protecting your attention from drains. Each day, imagine a shield around your focus and guard what you consume: emails, feeds, conversations. Before high-stakes moments, take 5 minutes to observe what's incoming, decide what truly needs your energy, and release what doesn't. The inner citadel is your core center. Strengthen it by naming one value you'll defend today and checking in on it in a minute or 2 of reflection. At day's end, note where your actions aligned with that value and where they didn't, so you can grow without guilt. Clarity before action means you think before you move. Start each day with 3 priorities and a quick forecast of potential obstacles. In every decision, ask yourself what really matters right now, and write down one small step that respects that priority. The empathic listener tilts the balance toward understanding. In every conversation, listen for the other person's point, paraphrase it back in one sentence, and ask one clarifying question. This keeps you connected, reduces misreads, and builds trust faster than quick fixes. The boundary builder protects your time and energy. Set and defend clear limits with yourself and others. Pick your top 3 tasks, say no or delegate one thing when necessary, and review what you're exporting to your calendar so you don't overextend. Daily renewal keeps you resilient. Build a quick reset into your day. 5 minutes of movement or light grounding, a moment of sunlight or fresh air, and a short wind-down ritual that signals your nervous system it's safe to transition. Sleep, light movement, and nourishment become your foundation. Key points in a sentence. You can feel and function at a high level by choosing your responses, not by pretending you don't feel at all. These 7 habits give you a practical toolkit to keep emotions from running you, while still letting you learn from them. If this resonated, tell me in the comments which habit you're most committed to starting this week, and what small daily tweak you'll make to keep it going. A like or a share helps this message reach someone who could use it today. For what comes next, first I'm excited to tease a deeper dive. Later this year we'll unpack real-world scenarios, how these habits shape negotiations, leadership in fast-moving teams, and remote work that stays human. There'll be practical exercises, quick challenges, and Q&A sessions to tailor the practices to your world. Thank you for spending this time together. You're building an inner citadel that's strong without being cold, calm without losing your edge. Stay curious, stay steady, and first I'll see you in the next video.